Welcome to another episode of Call to the Bullpen from our brand new studios at The Collective. I'm Clint Overton.
And I'm Stann.
Hey, we're here today to talk to you about something that I think is really important. It doesn't matter if you're a family enterprise business or a scaling startup. And that's just the idea of, as you grow, the incremental steps that you need to take in order to be successful. So one of the simple ways I like to think about it is crawl, walk, run in the fierce battle of a typical business. Another way of thinking about it might be firefight, stabilize, and scale. So I think this is a pretty interesting topic for us to cover, and one that I think we've learned a lot about during our experiences in our career, but something that we see, I think, very commonly in the companies that we serve.
Well, and I don't think it's just the companies that we serve, although, we get a lot more volume when we're looking at the companies we serve. But I mean, the reality is it's the growth of our company itself. I mean, we're just over 2 years into this. And so, a lot of what I'd say is we've been through the initial stage, we've been through the crawl stage or the firefight stage. And I would say that we're moving into the next phase of that, which is stability, or the walk portion of it. Just expressing to our listeners, what we've been through personally and what we see from our clients is, what we want to get out there to them today.
Absolutely. And, I think that, there's some different examples we talked about a little bit over the last couple of days as we were preparing. So, and one of them was really just typically for most business owners or leaders of organizations, there is this pull, and kind of an understandable one, to kind of stay in the fight as long as you possibly can, be kind of the pivot and the anchor for every decision. And as you start to scale the business, that becomes more and more difficult. I think what we oftentimes see is a business that has probably waited way too long to professionalize their operation. They are ready to make a change. And so it kind of goes from like this, I've held off as long as I possibly can, to now I want to kind of skip 7 or 10 steps and get to the finish line. And I think part of what we want to help educate people on is the importance of going at the right pace and taking the right steps in order to be successful. And so I know one that you and I talk about, very commonly, because it's kind of the backbone of any business, but it really applies to operations or sales or marketing, or really any critical key part of your organization. But financial operations is a place where we typically see this like very, very consistently. And that graduation of the office manager who was doing bookkeeping, that then as the business became more and more top heavy in terms of growth and scale, more and more stuff kind of got lumped on the shoulders of that person. And then over a period of time, there's a recognition that we're probably not operational accounting experts. We probably don't really have a forward-looking view of where we're going as an organization. We don't really know week to week really how well we're doing. So we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. And then we want to do like all these other like super forward-looking things like, hey, maybe we want to do an add-on acquisition, or we want to make investments that are going to help us grow. And we recognize that, wow, like, we really don't know what we don't know, but what we do know is that what we're doing right now isn't going to allow us to grow into the future. And so, share some of your experience.
Absolutely. And so I guess what I would say to that is, it follows the model, the crawl, walk, run model. And so you're doing whatever you can early on, whether you're a founder or there are founders in the company,
right?
You're really trying to put out the fires. And that's the reality of the situation. Everybody's wearing multiple hats, and book closing is not a priority. Cash flow forecasting is not a priority. It's what can we do to keep it on the rails,
right? Until
you move into that stability mindset. And that stability mindset is, okay, we need to professionalize what we're doing, because if we don't, we're going to continue doing the same things over and over again, making the same mistakes, not understanding what we actually have to do to move the company forward. And I mean, again, that's not just on the financial side of things, but to your point, yes, then you get to be in growth mode. And are we making acquisitions? Are we thinking about actually selling the company? And is it going to hurt us? I mean, not just on the accounting and finance side, have we professionalized everything in the organization? And have we gotten the founders out of the daily mix, or the founders no longer the ones that people are coming to solve the problems? Have we put the right systems in play? I mean, it's not just the accounting and finance function, it's professionalizing the entire organization. But to your point, can't skip steps in the process. And if you can build the base early, that's outstanding. Some people don't have the cash flow to build a base, and so they've got to do what they can to get by until they get to that stabilization and growth.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things that is interesting because of the fact that we have this interesting dichotomy, I think, in terms of the clients we serve. We have a segment of our client base that kind of fits that scaling startup model. And then we have, clients that are decades, family owned businesses that are, as we know right now, there's this, what they call the silver tsunami of baby boomer business owners who have been in the fight. They have younger family members who are not interested in taking over the business. They're tired. They want to exit the business. But as they start to look around, exiting for what you want is oftentimes not what you're going to get. So not only in terms of getting an investment from a venture capital firm, for instance, if you're a tech startup, or if you're trying to sell to a strategic buyer or a private equity firm as a traditional manufacturing business or B2B services business, the reality is that there's really a couple questions they're going to ask, I think fundamentally in most of these cases, and I don't think it's that different depending on the spectrum. One of which is, can I grow this business without the existing owner, especially if the owner's planning on stepping out, or if the owner's not really able to take the business to the next level. So that's one fundamental question. Does the business stand on its own? And then the other part of it is how fast can we scale it? Because everybody's making an investment because they want to make money. So let's just be very real. They don't want to start seeing returns 3 or 4 or 5 years ago because they have to come in and do all the work that you didn't do. They want to basically be able to walk into a stabilized foundation, and they want to start growing that business and seeing incremental returns in the first 12 months of their investment, right? And if they're not, they're starting to get itchy and antsy, et cetera. I think we just can't really communicate enough the importance of these businesses that are, in this mode of I really want to eventually exit or take an investment or what have you, is that taking all of those requisite steps is still critical for you to actually get what you want to get out of the business.
And I would say, just adding on to what you said, a lot of companies have a bottleneck. And whether the bottleneck is the CEO, generally there is a bottleneck, and it's freeing up that bottleneck, because when it comes to exiting specifically from a valuation standpoint, again, to your point, if they have to professionalize the organization, it's just going to turn down the multiple. And most founders want to exit for a multiple that they feel is fair and reasonable. I'm not saying that all founders are going to exit for the maximum multiple.
Sure.
Obviously, taking into account their employees is important. What their actual goals are is important, but it is going to decrease the valuation if you haven't professionalized your organization in all aspects of it.
Yeah, the other thing I think is just an interesting one, just in terms of the crawl, walk, run. So a topic that is at the forefront of any business conversation today is artificial intelligence, right? We have some partners that are coming in here, and the next hour we're going to spend some time in terms of how we feel like we can kind of partner together to drive value for clients who are interested in escalating their business and elevating their business through artificial intelligence. But many of these companies that are interested in getting a lot of that out of AI actually haven't done any of the professionalization. So they don't have well-defined processes. They don't have well-defined procedures. They typically lack a strong data infrastructure. They don't really know the quality of the data they have in their organization, all of which you have to have rock solid if you really want to get ROI out of artificial intelligence. I mean, artificial intelligence, sure, there's things that you can do to augment your business using Claude or ChatGPT or whatever the flavor of the day is. But those big operational efficiency gains where businesses are either A, saying, I'm trying to reduce costs, or B, which I think is actually smarter, is they're taking a look at their business and saying, how do I take these really valuable resources that I have and have them spend more time on value-added activities that can grow the top line, take away all the very task-heavy oriented activities and utilize automation and AI to do that for them? You can't do that if you haven't kind of fixed up your own backyard.
Absolutely. AI can be a wonderful tool, but to your point, it's all about what is the basis and what are you going to be using the AI for. If you haven't set that up properly, if you don't have the correct resources, if you don't have the correct executive team, you're not going to be able to utilize it, and you're going to be losing out to the competition that is.
Sure. And so I think, the overwhelming message that we're trying to share today is it doesn't really matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter if you're a 5-year-old business that's trying to seek capital from venture capital firm, for instance, because you have, a really interesting tech stack and a solution that you think is going to kind of change the universe. It doesn't matter if you're a 50-year-old manufacturing business. If you're at that stage where you recognize that your growth is stifled, there's work that you have to put in, right? There's no easy button. There's no kind of skipping steps. And candidly, in many of these organizations, to the point that you made earlier, it has taken them a long time to be willing to make the investment because they have to free up the cash to invest in these areas in order to seek the growth. In order to do that, they need to start to see incremental returns on the work that they put in so that they can invest further so that they can get into that growth and scale stage. So there's no shortcut.
And I guess the other thing I would say is if, you just look at the progression of a company. So let's just say it's one founder. And so you're in firefighting mode. You're trying to be the hero. I mean, that's really what you're doing because all the problems are coming to you and you have to have solutions for all of those problems. You get to stability mode and it becomes more, okay, I'm a leader now.
That's right.
And then it goes from, okay, we've stabilized it. I'm a leader to, okay, now I'm really an advisor to my team. And they actually should be solving all of the things that we've been doing through firefighting and stabilization. But that also doesn't mean that everybody's going to be able to make that journey with you. Not everybody can transition out of hero mode into leadership mode. Not everybody can transition out of leadership mode to advisor mode. And so we talk a lot about right butts, right seats, right people, right seats.
I like right butt.
But I mean, there's a reason that we talk about it a lot because not everybody can make that transition.
And I think the other thing I would say, because as we kind of wrap up some of our thoughts today, I would say that if it's making an investment in bringing in experienced professionalized resources in your organization, if it's making key hires in your business to help make some of those incremental gains in terms of professionalization of your business. There's a lot of small businesses out there that are investing in operating systems and creating cadences and processes around what they do. Obviously, EOS is a very popular fit in that specific space. But even in that case as well, like it is not a quantum leap forward. So like when you start EOS, for example, and there's, I think, this aspiration in many cases that the CEO is like, I'm embracing this visionary and I'm going to have somebody who's kind of take care of everything. Well, there's a big divide typically to get to that point to where you're describing, which is you have to get to that really strong stabilization point before you can let go as the leader of the organization and fit into that seat that is more visionary, advisory, strategic thinker. And you can't just decide that, hey, at the end of this year, like we finally took a step forward and we implemented EOS or scaling up or whatever. And then ultimately, like everything's fixed. Like it is an iteration. It's an iterative process. I think you just have to understand that going into it and you have to embrace it, because if you embrace it and you stay true to that crawl, walk, run approach, the outcomes are just going to be much better.
Absolutely. And I mean, to your point on skipping steps, I mean, most children don't go from really sitting to walking. It just doesn't happen. And not to say that there aren't businesses out there that haven't done it. There obviously have been, but
Sure.
The reality is there's a natural progression. And so that natural progression in life is the same one that we see from a business standpoint as well.
Well, this has been fun. I mean, the nice thing about this is we get to talk about things that we are very passionate about, that we're interested in, that we're kind of like in the fray every day. So really excited about having a chance to talk about this topic. Hopefully it's valuable for our listeners. Please make sure that if you're not already, follow and call it the Bullpen out on your favorite podcasting solution. Please follow us, subscribe, and would love your feedback as well. Check our companies out as well, boardroombullpen.com and the mercurycollective.com, where we really take the crawl, walk, run approach to helping companies be more successful. Until next time, I'm Clint Overton.
And I'm Stann.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.